everyone. Welcome back to episode 5 of the Halftime Chat with Lee Addison. I am your host, Big Les, and we've got the one and only, the coach, the master coach, should we call him, Lee Addison, sitting here with us. How are you, Lee?
You're lucky I've not got a beer in my hand recording with you on a Friday night. Although whatever you've been drinking today, I've seen you throwing something down your neck.
Well, ginger beer, non-alcoholic. I'm trying. I'm compromising.
You must be full of sugar because you went on your story before and said we're doing 3 other teams.
Oh well.
Mate, I'm good.
Look, I'm happy to use that as an excuse, Lee. If that's the excuse we're using, I'm happy to use that. Bundaberg ginger beer, ladies and gentlemen. It makes you say stuff you're not meant to say. So there you go.
There we go.
First of all, Aim High program. How's it all going? How have the sessions this week gone?
This week been washed out. But next week, big roadshow starts. So a week and a half in Brisbane at 3 different venues. And then off to Melbourne for 2 days. And then Easter happens. And then I'm in Sydney for 3 days. And then off to the UK to deliver over there. So big roadshow. So it's going well. And looking forward to it. And looking forward to meeting all the kids and giving them some good experiences.
Well, that's always great to hear, Lee. Always great to hear. We'll start off with the first team, the Sydney Roosters. What are your thoughts on the Sydney Roosters this season? What can we expect from them over the next few weeks? But generally, what are your thoughts on the Sydney Roosters? What notes have you got there for us?
When I first saw them play against Newcastle Knights, I thought they looked a bit heavy-legged and compared to Newcastle, and Newcastle beat them to the punch at everything. I thought to myself, maybe Robbo's done a bit of extra conditioning. He's sort of getting them to peak a bit later in the year because grand finals aren't won in March. They're won in September, October, and the like. So I sort of gave them benefit of the doubt. Round 2, they did okay. Round 3, they went down again. And I know Souths are a bit of a bogey team for them, actually. Yeah, shut up, Les. And Souths are a bit of a bogey team. So I actually think there's more pressure on the Roosters. And I thought what really worried me about their performance against Souths, I actually thought they were ill-disciplined. Not ill-disciplined from the point of view of starting fights or whatever, or even giving away penalties. It was just forcing passes when they didn't need to force them or making defensive decisions they didn't need to make. You know, it's just everything that has won the Roosters, the competitions in the past, so many things didn't seem right. So, look, I can't go back on what I said in round 1 in that I feel that Robbo wants them to peak a bit later in the year. But there are things popping up. There's people starting to question Walker's defence now, whether that's up to scratch. And I also think, and no doubt this will come up, if you want to put your slide up, mate, because, mate, when you look at these losses, what an awful lot of experience has walked out the door. And the big one for me, Boyd Cordner. I think Boyd Cordner was possibly the beating heart of the Roosters that we've seen for the best part of the last decade. I think he's a good mix of leader, brain power, but also brawn. And he was a very respected footballer. I think that's a massive loss. And you can't, let's take Cordner out of it for now. Jake Friend and Brett Morris and Josh Morris, that's an awful lot of experience gone out of the door. And I tipped Roosters at the start of the competition. I'm not going to sit here and rule them out. I also think my man Teddy, James Tedesco, I think they possibly need to either say to him, play 5'8", Teddy, or play fullback. I think he's trying to do a bit of everything, and I think the captaincy is in there a bit as well. He's had a great start to the year, but I don't know. There's something not quite right with him, and I think there's a bit of work to do, and I want to take away now this Premiership favouritism that I gave them because I at the minute I'm a bit worried about it.
Well, first of all, about Cordner, don't forget he was also Australian captain, New South Wales captain, and probably won a lot of games as captain as well for the New South Wales Blues. So that even that in itself is a big loss for the Roosters side. Trying to notch a few wins at the start of this season, having that brawn, having that guy that runs the perfect hole. It does take a big toll on that team. Jake Friend as well. Brett Morris and Josh Morris, that experience and the flair from them was, it'll be sorely missed. But they do have a lot of young guys coming through that will sort of replicate that over the next few years. I have a lot of confidence in Suwali, whether he not debuts, whether he starts to play a bit more football halfway through this season or not. I'm not sure. They've also got a few other guys in there: Paul Monorowski, Kevin Nguama, bit of experience. Billy Smith's been in the side regularly, and he is in the side this week, to my knowledge. So they've got a lot of confidence in him. Whether those young guys can replicate the flair that was lost with Morris, lost with Cordner, lost with Josh, Brett, it's going to be an interesting few months for the Roosters. Although I do have a lot of confidence. Talking about Sam Walker, though, I think Sam Walker and Luke Keary, whether Luke plays 6 and Sam plays 7, or Sam plays 6 and Luke plays 7, I think that needs to be solidified. And then they sort of need to work out their roles, because, I don't know, going to the Roosters and Souths game the other night, it was sort of like one was playing off the cuff and one was playing structured, and then at the next point, they swapped roles. I think they need to sort of look at their roles and sort of look at who is the guy that's going to be taking your side around the park, and who's the guy that's going to add that little flair and add the spark. And I mean, they both can add a bit of spark of their own, but I think they need to sort of work out roles.
I was watching the North Devils in the Queensland Cup the other day as part of my job on the Queensland League scene, and mate, Rowan Smith, great coach. It looked like he had 4 or 5 different pivots. Just because you got 6 on your back or 7 on your back doesn't mean you have to play a certain role, and don't be surprised if the Roosters are actually swapping it on purpose to keep the opposition guessing. You don't have to have a 6 that stands 2 out from the ruck. You don't have to have a 7 that stands 1 out from the ruck. There's so many things you can do. You can have split halves. You can have 3 pivots. You can have 4 pivots. You can have 13 pivots if you want. But what you're talking about, I think, is, and I think I throw Tedesco into that mix too, because I think he's been doing a little bit of what you don't want is Tedesco to run at you. You'd rather him pass the ball sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I reckon Teddy's probably been doing a little bit too much passing, popping up in the passing places rather than the running places. And when I say running, he might run and then pass on instinct rather than thinking, I now need to pass the ball to get it to a certain point. So there's no doubt that there's a few gaps there, or a few things that need straightening out. When we talk about Para, I'm going to use a certain theory. I'll wait till we get to Para to explain that theory and then refer back to the Roosters. Because don't forget, I did also say that conditioning-wise, it looked to me like the Roosters were saying the comp is won in September and October, not March. Bear in mind, I did an interview with Teddy as part of my stuff in January, February, and he said he'd not been on the training field yet because he had proper off-season surgery. So, there's all these things to... I think long gone are the days where people think they're going to win every game in the NRL and go undefeated all year. Yeah. Like, it's just not that comp anymore. It's just not that kind of comp.
I think the comps, I think I agree with you there. The comp's gotten so much closer, especially over the past few months. It's gone from the top 8 and the bottom 8 are completely separate to what is the top 8, what is the bottom 8. It just keeps us guessing, because I think over the past 12 months, not the past 3 months, sorry, the ladder's been flipped on its head to what people thought it would be and what it was last year.
I don't disagree, but when the week-on-week grind kicks in, that's when you'll start to see the wheat from the chaff. So the week-on-week grind, I mean, I dare say the Titans nearly had the pants pulled down last night. I didn't see all the game, but the Titans nearly had the pants pulled down because they're probably playing the West Tigers and probably went in a little bit relaxed. That's what can happen sometimes. And then also the injuries and the injury tolls that start to mount up. I always say after round 4, I'm going to look at the injury tolls and look at NRL physio and see what the casualty ward's like. And it's normally always ridiculous after round 4. So, yeah. And it's interesting in that regard.
In terms of players coming off contract in June 1, I think a big one for me is Angus Crichton. Now, look, I've talking to a few mates today, and they've been saying that Angus Crichton hasn't really stood out as much as he has over the past 18 months. Because over the past 18 months, especially last season, he was fantastic for the Roosters. I think Satili Tupanua is really standing out now. We've seen a few games where Angus Crichton's gone to the bench. So, look, these young guys coming through are really sensational. Angus Crichton, I would love to see him in a Roosters jersey for a lot longer. But what are your thoughts on Angus Crichton? Is he a pivotal signing for the Roosters? Is he a guy that you think they have to re-sign?
I still think one of my really good mates is his player manager.
Mm.
So if I say anything bad about him, I want to get a phone call or a text off my said good mate. Nah, but I'll be honest, I think he came back to the pack a little bit in the last couple of years.
Mm.
Definitely last year. And I think he needs a big year this year. Whenever we're talking about players and teams coming back to the pack as well, we've got to throw in this big thing called COVID over the top.
Yeah,
a lot of them have had the lives turned upside down. So, better credit, benefit the doubt, credit where it's due. Angus Crichton is a good footballer. I think we all just want to see a bit better football out of him. And with his contract being up, it's in his interest to play well so that he either gets a better contract out of the Roosters or he gets a better contract somewhere else.
What are your thoughts? I guarantee that you would have seen a little bit of this guy since you are a Super League fan. Kevin Naguama. What are your thoughts on Kevin Naguama? He's obviously coming off contract as well. Is he a pivotal guy that you sort of need to re-sign? I know I think he'd be in his early 30s right now, if I'm right. What are your thoughts on Kevin Naguama? Obviously, he had a great season in the Super League before coming over the Roosters.
Just a great professional, and what you see is what you get each week. So I don't think when he got signed, he was getting signed to be in the first 13 chosen. But when they do get a couple of knocks, he is not going to let anyone down, and he's going to be a fan favourite. He's a great professional. He's been an excellent professional for a long time. Whether he signs another contract or not, I suppose only his body can tell him that. I got the feeling that Kevin Naguama was signed to be that cover. And it's an excellent signing in that regard. Excellent.
Yeah, I think both of these guys, look, now I'm just going to ask you this question, and I have nothing against Crichton and I have nothing against Naguama. Say money in the cap is tight.
Yeah.
Are you giving more to Crichton or are you giving more to Naguama in terms of depth, in terms of a backup? What would sort of be your priority? And I think this might be even a stupid question because Crichton's a sensational player and I might just be judging him too hard.
Yeah, I don't think it's an apple versus apple. I think the question you probably need to ask there is that, and bear in mind, one of my best mates is his manager. I think Angus Crichton, being an Origin player and whatnot, can probably command top dollar.
Yeah.
For one Angus Crichton, you could probably get two Kevin Naguamas at their start of their season or at the start of their career or at the end of their career. And that's not underplaying Kevin Naguama. I'm just saying he's in the twilight of his career, so he's probably just getting one last contract or whatever it may be. So I think that's the question. Well, let's look at the signings, mate. I mean, you've only got two people there. I suppose was Kevin Naguama not one of them too? Should he have been in that column?
Yeah, he should be in that column.
What about Freddie Lussick?
Freddie Lussick, he was signed he's been in the system for a while, but he's on a loan deal at the moment to the Dragons.
I was just going to say, which was the Lussick that was in Super League? I coached Darcy.
Darcy. And
but then one of the younger brothers was there too, weren't
they? Joey Lussick? Was it Joey?
Possibly, yeah.
He just went back to the Super League.
I know the dad, and I know the Darcy from my time at Manly, and I remember Joey because I taught him at St Augustine's in Sydney, and I just get mixed up sometimes because a couple of them look so similar now as well. So that's a small signings column compared to what's gone out the door. So that would suggest that they've got something in reserve. A club like the Roosters ain't going to have a year where they just forget to sign some players or struggle to sign players. Would
you consider, if you were Trent Robinson or if you were the key guy organising the signings for the Roosters, would you consider letting Angus Crichton go for some money for some other players, considering the depth?
Yeah, to me, no player is ever too big not to be let go.
And
have you noticed Roosters is one of those clubs that doesn't get into wrangles with players and player agents? I'm sure they get in wrangles, but can you imagine? So I don't want to name names. So I don't have a problem with anyone demanding more money. But there's been some news this week that Payne Haas is hanging out for more money. Right? Can you imagine that conversation at Roosters or Melbourne?
Out the door. Yeah.
Maybe not out the door, but it's just not happening.
Yeah.
Well, number one, it probably wasn't elite, and So, and I'm not criticising Payne Haas. I like Payne a lot as a person, as a player. I want him to earn so much money that he retires the minute he plays and then never has to work a day in his life. That's what I want. But what I'm saying is, those things just don't happen at a club like the Roosters. The club will keep marching on, and just like Melbourne will keep marching on. And if they drop a little bit, well, so be it. They're not going to go into free fall. And I think that's what Luke Robinson has created at Roosters now. He did have a bit of free fall early in his reign. They went from premiers, I think, to wooden spooners in 2 years, something like that. But I just think this is now one of the powerhouse clubs. They're going to win more than they're going to lose. They're probably going to finish top four. Big wow. How poor. Whether they're going to win the premiership or not is the other question.
Now, we haven't talked about this guy yet, but he's also in the signings column. Connor Watson. What are your thoughts about him, and what position do you think he's best at? Because he's playing 9 at the moment. Personally, I think he's a great 13, but obviously you got Victor Radley there. 14 as well, he plays really good off the bench. What do you think his best position?
Don't know about best position, and I think utility. You've just mentioned utility, a utility, and I think that in a squad that you don't forget, any squad this year could have 3 players taken out because of COVID at any time. So if you could, the more utilities you can have, the more fillers you can have, that's better for your squad balance. If you've got a utility in your team, it gives you it almost frees an interchange up for you. So again, I don't think anybody needs to have a best position. Personally, I like him at 9 or 13. But no, Connor Watson could probably play anywhere, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be very, very interesting. But I think he's probably going to play 9 for the rest of the year from what it looks like until, obviously, Brandon Smith comes next year. Then, not too sure whether he is a 13 or a 14. He probably most likely will be a 14 because Victor Radley, I don't think, is going anywhere anytime soon. It'd be very interesting to see where Connor Watson ends up. But Renouf Tony as well. He's been signed for the next 18,000 years from what it looks like. I made an error there. But 2023, it's supposed to be a closed bracket. But 2023, Renouf Tony, he's a really good front rower that they did get from the Dogs. Really, really strong and tough. And I think that he's a good little addition to their side. Whether he'll get some games on the bench this year, I don't know. He's quite young, but I'm very excited to see how he goes.
Totally. I don't disagree with you. Don't disagree. Sorry, I'll just nip in there. I know you're looking at your notes. Roosters are the kind of team that will bite you on the arse if you write them off too quickly. I mean, for all what that squad, what that ladder is looking like, that graph, a lot of experience out the door and a lot of youth left. So if we're saying good things about the youth at Titans because they're young, and that's probably we've got to say the same thing here. They're going to grow together. Sam Walker will be a better player at the end of the year than he is now.
For sure.
No two ways about it. No two ways.
And speaking about Sam Walker in these key players for 2022, we've also got Drew Hutchinson here. And I really like Drew. I think he's done a really good job at the 14. The thing I'm confused about is each week they start Connor Watson at 9 and they have Drew at 14. And last minute they put Drew at starting 9 and have Connor Watson coming off the bench. Now, I think it's really good because obviously Connor Watson then becomes that utility that can just play anywhere in the side. But Drew, I really liked his footy at 9. I think he's been a really good 9 for the Roosters. I think he's played some great football. So I
think sometimes what commentators on the game do, and that's what you are. You're a commentator on the game. You're passing comment on it, and a lot of spectators and newspapers and whatnot. They always talk about the players, like that player should play now because he's the best at that position or whatever. Coaches quite often will think from the tactical aspect. So, or the ducks and Drake. So, for example, can you imagine if you're an NRL coach and you're planning all week for Connor Watson to be at 9 and you've got your marker system prepared accordingly, whatever it may be, you've done homework on Connor Watson and you've done 10% or 20% of that homework on Drew Hutchinson, and then all of a sudden an hour before kickoff it changes. That's the kind of thing. It's just to keep them guessing, and that a change like that could be the difference between the Roosters scoring a try or not. And that try might be what wins them the game. And that's what coaches do all the time. They play ducks and drakes. You know, once for a grand final, I didn't want the opposition to have a Scooby-Doo what team I was picking. So I named every player in alphabetical order in my squad for the match programme.
Well, there you go.
And we won. And we won because the opposition didn't have a clue who we were playing.
Could you imagine looking at a team sheet, being the opposition coach and seeing a front rower at fullback and a lock forward?
There's nothing in the game's rules to suggest you can't. So ultimately, it's just a jersey, isn't it? Like it's, I don't know what the NRL sheds say on the team sheet saying them, but I am familiar what they are. The Rugby Football League team sheet saying they actually say stand off and scrum half.
Yeah.
Well, what if you don't, as a coach, you decide not to have that distinction?
Yeah.
I've played a game with no halves before now. So what do? Find a new sheet of paper? Or I've played a game with my fullback playing half. And I've played 2 extra props. And I won a grand final doing it.
There you go.
So, that's what I'm saying. So, the whole reason this has come up is we were talking about players and where they go. The reason that will be changing is because Trent's got a tactical thing in mind, or he's giving the opposition coach something to guess about, or it could be something else, something as simple as Connor Watson's carrying a bit of a knock and he probably doesn't need to start a game. It could be anything. It's don't forget coaches are under a bit of pressure too because they've got to name a team list by Tuesday. And again, being a coach, I sometimes naming a team 5 days before a game is impossible. But the game actually finds you if you get it massively wrong or whatever. So, there's so many things that go into that, mate.
Yeah, for sure. Look, I'm going back to the Roosters, though. Very excited for what they have in store for us this season, but it's going to be a very interesting one from them. I think that's what
it's going to be a really intriguing watch because most people predicted them for the title. I don't care what they say. They did. And, one thing that I don't think you and I will do, Les, is hide from what we said in the pre-season, I'm certainly more than happy to be held accountable for anything I said in the pre-season, especially as I put 16 of the 8 of the teams in the 8.
Fair enough. We'll move on to the next team here. We've got the Parramatta Eels. Now, look, we don't know what to think about Parramatta. The fans say that they're going to win the comp every year, but we all know in the back of our minds it's probably not going to be the case. But look, I really do like Para, and I'm liking the direction that they're going in. And I think that Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown are really starting to click, and they're really starting to form a really good combination there for the Parramatta Eels. What are your thoughts on Parramatta?
Massive chance. Massive chance. They've been improving every single year. If you look at the ladder finishes, they've actually been improving every year, last couple of years. I think they had one big dip, but now they're improving every year. So, to me, unless something goes completely wrong this year, they're going to be in and around the top 4. Which is, if you're in the top 4, you're a chance of the Premiership as far as I'm concerned. I think Brad Arthur has learned from his last couple of years where Parramatta have sort of dipped a bit approaching the finals. Last year, they dipped a bit early and then sort of came up a bit, but probably left the run a little bit too late. There's a lot in their performances that suggests to me they're just happy to win one, maybe lose one. They're never happy to lose one, but not stress too much if you lose one. Their combinations don't quite seem to be completely and utterly on fire yet, but they're good enough. I don't think they're as far behind in that sense as the Roosters at the minute. There's also another caveat, right? Back when more people used to read newspapers than they do now, the Daily Telegraph sales used to go up by a percentage or two if Parramatta were on the back page. So if they decided to put Parramatta on the back page, they'd sell more newspapers. So if we think about the media in its current format, it is in their interest to talk as much about Para as they can. And I do think Mitchell Moses is a fantastic player that has, again, had probably a bit too much discourse about him, so that he probably sometimes second guesses himself a bit. But he's a year older, he's a year wiser. A lot of their combinations have been together for a while. So I like Marnie, I like Moses. And then you've got Gutho at the back. That's an interesting spine. They've got a good prop rotation, some decent outside backs. A lot of them have been together for a while. Brad Arthur's a good coach. Have you noticed Brad Arthur's job's never really been under any pressure? Like it gets mentioned a bit, but and he's also won premierships at lower levels, so he knows what to do.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be very, very exciting football from Parramatta over the next few weeks. And I think they've been looking quite impressive too. And especially Dylan Brown, he's turned from a solely defensive 5'8" to a really flary one. I had a bit of flair about him last season, but I think this year he's really turned it on and he's really looking good. We look at...
And again, that's a sign of good coaching too, if players improve.
For sure. We'll look at this signings column now. We've got Bailey Simonson. He's come over from Canberra, and he signed until the end of this season. And then we've obviously got Mitch Rain also to the end of this season from the Gold Coast. Bailey Simonson, if you watched a bit of him last year, he was really good when he came in for Canberra. Played a bit of fullback while Chance was out, obviously, with that injury, that neck injury, and then played a lot of footy on the wing and scored a try or two basically every game. He was electric. Coming over to Parramatta now, I think he's going to be a really good winger. Did you watch much of Bailey Simonson? And if you did, what are your thoughts on him and this signing?
Solid player. Anything that's come out of Canberra in the last couple of years has been all right. The late, great Pete Mulholland probably recruited him. So anybody who recruits have got wraps on, basically, until they get proven otherwise. So it's not a bad signing. Same with Mitch Rain, another solid footballer. Again, I don't think... these signings are a little bit reminiscent of the kind of thing that Melbourne Storm might do, actually, these kind of players. I'm pointing at the screen as if people can see my finger. But, that's the kind, if Melbourne signed them, everyone would be going, oh, Bellamy, he's done it again. They found somebody, he's going to turn him. Well, if they were in Melbourne's column, you'd be saying that's exactly what you'd be saying about them. And then when I compare that to the losses, I don't think anybody's going to be losing any sleep about much in that losses column. With all due respect, I mean, every single one of them good footballers, but didn't get them to a premiership. So you've got to try something a bit different. You know what else impressed me? Shifting again to the next column. Is that Ryan Matterson didn't play last week.
Yeah, he was injured.
He's a front liner. And they beat Melbourne in Melbourne. So hang on a minute. Like, they beat Melbourne in Melbourne. Like, that's the kind of thing that premiership winning teams do.
Yeah.
And I know Cronulla pulled the pants down a bit the week before, but it wasn't a shellacking. It was a close game. And if you lose a close game by 4 or 6 or whatever, that means you can easily win it. And they're 2 from 3, and I reckon that they're going fine. They're going fine. I still think they've got plenty of improvement in them. And I think that's a great sign. I really do. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a Penrith and Parra grand final now.
I honestly wouldn't. I had something to say, but then I completely forgot what I was going to say. But that's what I was going to say. Ray Stone. I should have put him in the losses column here because he has done his ACL and he'll be out for the season. And he's obviously going to the Dolphins next year. So I think that's a bit of a big loss there for Parramatta. His defense is outstanding. Really. Are you looking at yourself there? Is that you in the calendar?
No, I'm changing my Man City calendar. That's Riyad Mahrez, who plays for Manchester City. Every year since I've been on this earth, my dad buys me a Manchester City calendar for Christmas. And even at the age of 43 years of age, he still sends it over to me from England. So there you go. And I just forgot, and we tipped into April, and now I can't hook it on. The big thing about that try last week, it was that he was there in that position. Hope you don't mind me doing this while we're recording. That adds a bit of flavour to the. He was there. He was there in that position. He was hunting. And if he didn't get there, I think there was a couple of others who might have got there as well. That's a sign. I think they're all working for each other, Parra. I think they all want it. There's Gutho as a captain is a kind of person that does bring people together. And Gutho's popular because of the kind of all-effort game he plays all the time. He leaves nothing in the tank when he plays. And he's all action, and he's always in the screen, and he's putting his body on the line. And when you've got a captain like that, your team feed off it.
Yeah, for sure.
Feed off it.
His defense as well over the past few weeks and even into last season is sensational. And yeah, it's a bit of a loss there for Parramatta, especially going into next season. But talking specifically about this season, though, their losses column, Joey Lussick, who we were talking about before, he was in the Super League. He came over to Parramatta for a season. He's going back to St. Helens for 2022. Will Smith obviously went to the Gold Coast. He played last night. He's going back. He's going to the Gold Coast until 2022. Blake Ferguson, we all know the situation with him, so I won't delve too deep into that one. But Michael Oldfield, Sam Hughes, a young gun, and Jordan Rankin, who was probably one of the New South Wales Cup's standouts for Parramatta. They've all been released. And then Keegan Hipgrave, obviously shock retirement. I don't remember what really happened there, but I'm pretty sure it was something to do with a leg injury that saw him.
That one's real sad. That one's real sad because he was a great talent, and his career just got impacted by injury so much. So, yeah, I feel sorry for Keegan there.
Yeah, same here. It was a really tough one hearing about that, and it was one that I didn't really expect. But look, as you said, doesn't really phase us too much. If it was a Moses or a Gutho we saw walking out the door, I think it'd phase us a little bit more. But most of these guys, they won't have the biggest impact as they leave well, not the biggest impact. I worded that a bit poorly, but they won't be the biggest losses going into this season.
And they're all fine football. There's no two ways about that. But there's losses and there's losses, So.
Off contract though, we talked about Ryan Matterson, Tom Opacek, who has been in and out of the starting side. I think he's a really talented centre and a great get from the North Queensland Cowboys last season. He was phenomenal in most games last season. A prolific try scorer, really flary centre as well. What are your thoughts on
that? If my respect level for Tom was there, it went through the roof when he performed so well in the semis last year. I think it was the semis. And I think his brother had died or something like that. The morning of the game or whatever. And I always think when I see those kind of things, mental fortitude, heart, determination, but also focus and professionalism. And I'd chuck another 50 grand at him to play just for that. Those qualities, if you get them in a team, that's another reason why I think this is this kind of thing that are making Para a good shout, a real good shout. They've been building for a while, and there's an argument to say that if they don't do it this year, they won't do it, kind of thing. But they're just a real solid outfit. Real solid outfit. We saw a lot of solid people in the team.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think it's going to take one more year to get them to that top 2, top 4 sort of ranking, or do you think it's this year?
I don't know enough about their salary cap situation and everything else to say, oh, this got to be this year, whatever. I just always think with Para, they're just missing a bit of something, right? Whether it's a Boyd Cordner type back rower or a Cooper Cronk type half or maybe an outside back, somebody the likes of Inglis or something, just something like that. Because when you see a team win a grand final, like all the talk was of Nathan Cleary's kicking game and his role in the victory last year and the intercept try. So you talk about individuals, don't you, and what they did. And sometimes when you look at Para, you just wonder if they're just missing one or two individuals like that. And but that is also their strength too, because what that does is that it means they're more likely to finish higher up the ladder because they perform each week. What you see is what you get absolutely every week. And I think, and also a sign of a good coach team, a well-coached team, is that they do turn up for each other all the time. What they don't want to do is use too much energy so that they've got none left by the end of the year. And I just think, there was an occasion the other day where Moses was shouting for the ball and it didn't go to him, for example. The press turned on him a bit, NRL 360 and said it was, that's not good, it's not a good sign. To me, that's rubbish. It's probably Reid Marnie being just as confident in his decision making as that of Moses. Like it's better to have more options than no options kind of thing. And I don't think it's a slight on Moses at all or whatever. That's just the press trying to create something, if you ask me. Moses is a year older and a year wiser. He's got some origin under his belt now. He's a damn good footballer. What Moses needs to do is get a bit like Luke Brooks, but nowhere near as bad. He's always been a calmer footballer in that sense. Just a few less trick plays, just control things, just strangle the opposition with control a little bit. Like you say, the 5'8" is growing in stature now as well. And Gutho has got yet another year at the back, and he plays a bit like a pivotal player anyway. Like he just pass the ball when he needs to and stuff like that. So I just think their balance is really good. Like I don't think there's any point in the team where you go, oh yeah, we'll target that because he's weaker, or we'll target that because he's weaker. Whether they've got enough quality to win the big games that matter will be counterbalanced by the amount of time they spend together and how strong that structure is and how much they fight for each other. So I think they're a really, really good chance for the Premiership. And I don't think it'll do them any harm if they lose a couple of games along the way, just to keep them, keep revisiting where they're at all the time, So, yeah, I really like the look of them, mate. I really like the look of them. I do. I just wonder if there might be one signing short. That's all. But
Be very interesting. I'm excited too. You've got me excited, Lee. It's not often that you get me excited, but you've really got me excited now. I'm really going to be looking really deeply into this Parramatta game then, I guess. I can't wait.
I guess I'm thinking that them and Penrith are the two most complete teams at the minute, in the sense that they all know the role, they all work for each other. You know, we've just talked about the Roosters and we just said that there might be a bit of confusion or whatever it may be, or they might not be quite clicking. So those two are the two teams that to me look the most likely.
Yeah, for sure. Totally. And I'm very excited for these next few games of rugby league. We're going to do something a bit different just before we finish off. I'm going to get your tips, Lee. I want to see your tips for this week. Now,
can you get the fixtures up for me?
I can get the fixtures up for you right now. We'll go on to the NRL app just before we finish off. So we've got the Sharks currently versus the Knights, 8-0.
I think the Sharks will be leading 8-0 at half time, and then anything could happen in the second half, but I think Sharks will go on to win.
There you go.
Because it's at Shark Park and it's windy as all. Heck.
Yeah, for sure. Very exciting one. I actually tipped the Knights, so I'm sort of shitting my pants at the moment. Panthers v South, and don't do me dirty, Lee. Don't do me dirty.
I can't say anything then because Panthers are going to win.
Oh, Lee.
Panthers are going to win.
All right, there you go. Panthers there from Lee. Warriors v Broncos. Who have you got there?
I worry about the Warriors. But the Broncos have got a chink in them too. Where's that game at? Is it Redcliffe?
Let me have a look right now. I think it is Moreton Daily Stadium in Redcliffe. Yeah, so it's technically
Moreton Daily, yeah. I think Kevin Walters is the kind of coach that will not take lightly that they got dusted by the Cowboys last week at Suncorp, and he will say the right things all week in the dressing room so that the Broncos will perform.
Yep.
If the Warriors lose this week, you've got to put them in the same category as the Tigers. So I think they'll have a big want and need to win that game too.
Yeah.
Broncos.
All right. We're going on to 5:30 tomorrow night. The Seagulls versus the Raiders. Who have you got there?
It's not at Brookvale, is it?
No, it's at Glen Willow Oval, Mudgee. It's a Manly home game.
Raiders?
Yeah.
I think Manly are struggling a little bit.
All right. Roosters v Cowboys.
You know what's big about all these games, mate? I'm just providing delaying tactics now, just so people forget my tip. But you know what's big about all these games? They literally could dictate some of the season. So if Raiders lose tomorrow to the Sea Eagles, everyone will go, well, they're on a win-loss thing. If the Sea Eagles win tomorrow, everyone will be going, their season's back on track. Broncos and Warriors, that's big in that sense, because the Warriors, if they lose, they're going to be looked at the same way as the Tigers. Cowboys, Roosters, if the Roosters lose tomorrow, I'm not saying you're going to put a pen through them as premiership hopes, but there's going to be massive doubts put on them, isn't there? And I reckon we're still in that phase where Townsville is hot as all heck and humid as all heck. I think it's a real danger game for the Roosters, real danger game. And I'm going to go Cowboys.
There you go. You heard it from Lee. Cowboys over the Roosters. Sunday night, 4:05. Sunday night, 4:05. Storm.
Yeah. Storm.
All right. And then Sunday at 6:15, Eels v Dragons. Eels?
Yeah.
There we go, guys. You've heard it from the one and only Lee, and thank you again for coming on. It was an absolute
You're all right,
pleasure.
mate.
Absolutely.
You're all right, mate. Sorry for ruining all your dreams about South.
It's all right. I forgive you, Lee.
Take care, lad.
Take care, and thank you guys for listening on to another episode of the Halftime Chat.